Hi, I'm Rafaela Manzo, teacher trainer and founder of ProTEFL Institute. I work with English teachers who want support with the lesson planning, methodology, and classroom decisions. And today I'd like to challenge one of the most widely accepted ideas in language teaching. Not because it's completely wrong, but because, like many things in teaching, the answer depends on what we're trying to achieve. Imagine your B1 students. You've just asked them to prepare a short presentation, and before speaking, they spent some time organizing their ideas in their L1. Should you stop them? Many teachers would, because the assumption is simple. If learners think in English, they'll speak better English. But before we answer that question, we need to borrow a concept from second language acquisition. One of the long-term goals of language learning is automaticity. That's the ability to retrieve language quickly and effortlessly without consciously translating every sentence. But here's something that's often misunderstood. Automaticity is an outcome of learning, it's not a strategy. Learners don't become more automatic because we tell them to think in English. They become more automatic because they've used the language successfully again and again. Repeated retrieval is what builds automaticity, not simply avoiding the first language. At this point, you might be thinking, but if students keep thinking in their first language, won't they become dependent on it? That's a legitimate concern. And yes, students can become over-reliant on their first language. But dependence isn't created by briefly using L1 to organize ideas. It's created when learners stop attempting to process English altogether. Those are two very different situations. There is another concept that's really helpful here. Inner speech. When bilingual students plan what they're going to say, languages don't simply switch on and off like a light switch. Research suggests that both languages remain active while students organize ideas, solve problems, and prepare language. So if a learner briefly plans in Italian, for example, before speaking English, that isn't necessarily a sign that learning isn't happening. It may simply be the brain organizing information in the most efficient way. Trying to suppress that process completely may actually make the task harder. Another question I often hear is, that's fine, but what if I don't speak my students' first language? Interestingly, this discussion isn't really about the teacher speaking the learner's L1. It's about recognizing when learners' first language might support learning. Students don't need us to participate in every planning process. Sometimes the decision isn't about what the teacher says. It's about what the teacher allows. Now, let's borrow an idea from cognitive psychology, which is cognitive load. Every classroom task places demands on working memory. Think about what we're asking a B1 learner to do during a presentation. Generate ideas. Organize those ideas. Retrieve vocabulary. Choose appropriate grammar. Monitor pronunciation. Maintain fluency. Think about the audience. That's already a demanding task. Now, imagine adding one more instruction. Don't think in Italian. Okay, let's stick to Italian. At that point, we have to ask ourselves something important. Is that helping students communicate more effectively, or are we simply increasing the mental effort required to complete the task? Sometimes insisting on English isn't creating better learning. It's simply increasing cognitive load. So, should students think in English? Sometimes not, because this isn't really a question about English versus L1. It's a question about task design. If students are practicing language they've already automized, encouraging them to stay in English may strengthen fluency. If they're dealing with a cognitively demanding task, briefly using their first language may actually free up mental resources to produce better English afterwards. The same strategy won't always lead to best learning because the context has changed. So next time you're deciding whether students should think in English, ask yourself 3 questions. First, where is the real challenge? Generating ideas or producing language? Second, where do I want my learners' mental effort to go? Towards planning or towards language production? And finally, am I helping learners develop automaticity, or am I simply increasing cognitive load? If you're interested in making more evidence-informed classroom decisions, consider subscribing. Every video in this series starts with a real classroom dilemma, explores what the research actually tells us, and turns into a practical framework you can use in your own teaching. In the next episode, we'll tackle another question teachers debate all the time. Should grammar ever be explained in learners' first language?